Hello, my dear friends. So great to be talking to you again. Don't worry, I'm not dead. I've had that question a couple of times in the last few days. The reason I haven't been streaming is because we've been moving, even though it looks like I'm sitting in the same spot as always. This is actually a completely different apartment, and we're going to be moving again in the near future. Finding a permanent solution to habitation is not exactly easy in Sweden, as many of you will know. But since my last stream, I've been playing a lot of World of Warcraft War Within, really enjoying that. I still want to do the rest of Black Myth Wukong. Elden Ring DLC, and now Space Marine 2 is coming out as well, so I'm hoping to do stuff on all of that. But for today, we're going back to Tekken because we have some things to talk about. Now, my last video on Tekken, I talked about why I've decided to exit the community and not play the game anymore. And I just want to add something quick to that video before I go on to today's topic, because I noticed when I was editing that video that I forgot to add one thing that I wanted to say, which was that even though the main reasons I quit the game was I think that the developers are being complete scumbags about the way it's being developed and monetized, even though I think it's a lot less fun mechanically and just to play than previous entries in Tekken. Another part of it was also that I found it difficult to be successful at the game, and I wasn't adapting to the way it's being played as well as I would have liked to. My plan was to buy this new gaming computer and then really commit to Tekken 8 and try and be seriously high level at it. And I found that extremely difficult. I've said in like many of my videos going back since the channel was created that the best way to get good at Tekken is just to keep coming back to it, to be persistent no matter how frustrating and hard it gets. And I think that's still true. It's just that for me, the frustration of having to keep trying to improve in that environment was too big, and I didn't feel it was worth it anymore. But part of it is definitely an issue of me, a skill issue, and an issue of me not being able to get good or as good as I wanted to get at that game. So I just wanted to say that as well. But now we're going to move on to the very funny, interesting topic of potential loot boxes in Tekken 8. Now, if you've missed this, the image that you're looking at right here, this is from a thread on Reddit. These are assets that have been data mined from the files of Tekken 8, and they look a lot like something that you would use, a graphic that you would use for loot boxes, like a single normal box, a single premium box, 3 normal boxes, 3 premium boxes, or something like that. And it's got a lot of people worried because since Tekken 8 came out, it's increasingly had more and more aggressive and strange monetization pumped into it in a way that feels very, very strange. Personally, for me, very uncomfortable and makes me want to play the game less. Now, does this mean that we will have loot boxes in Tekken 8? Is it some sort of proof? Not really. But that makes you speculate on what it could be and what it will be used for. And that actually gets quite interesting because as far as I can tell, there aren't that many different things that this could be used for in a way that makes sense, unless Namco are about to unveil some new sort of itemization that we simply don't understand, or they're going to like change the way that the store and the battle pass works altogether. But if you read the comments here, you get the usual ones, the ones that we've seen since the reveal of the Tekken store. Why do you care? It doesn't matter. You can just ignore it. We've had that debate and discussion on the channel and all over the internet many, many times. So I'm not going to reiterate, but it obviously does matter for everybody as far as I'm concerned. But then people have these different things they're speculating on that this could be or could mean. Now, the first thing that I thought of was just a graphic for some sort of treasure chest that comes up when you play the in-game modes and you get like in-game gold, not the premium currency, but the gold that you're able to spend in the store. That's something that we had in previous Tekken games. You got like a little treasure box and you could get some sort of item from the default customization in the game, and then some gold that you could buy some other stuff for. Now, the reason I don't think that really makes sense is because you already get gold for playing the game, and it just jumps straight into your in-game wallet, so to speak. There's no need for a specific graphic for that, in my opinion. It's also true that you earn billions of in-game gold by just playing the game a little bit, and you can then buy all the items in the default customization mode right away. The default customization mode is very limited, and it's obvious now that it was intentionally designed to be very limited so that they could make more money or attempt to make more money, putting all these other customization items behind different kinds of paywalls, right? So it giving you in-game gold doesn't make sense, because if you've been playing the game for a week, you already have all the gold you will ever need. So the other guess that people have been throwing around is that this will be a way for people to retroactively gain items from previous battle passes. In terms of the timing, that kind of makes sense, because we are now in the second battle pass. And so you have this battle pass that's out for like a month or a couple of months or whatever, and when it ends, those items are no longer available. So now you'll be able to, I guess, buy these boxes and have a chance to get items that are no longer available, right? Now, if that's the case, it really is the most scumbaggy thing they could possibly do with this. It's really, really pathetic if that's the case, which is kind of the reason it makes me believe that it's exactly what it's going to be, because I don't put anything past Bandai Namco anymore. But it is just speculation. But if you think about it, right, the battle pass is already kind of pathetic because it really doesn't have any good items populating it, because it's not the sort of game where you can really, I think, get a lot out of a customization mode. I know a lot of people disagree and think customization is really fun, and they want to make, Lily look like, some character from their favorite anime or whatever. But you can look at the battle pass and see that it's really starved for good and interesting items and interesting options, right? If you look at the free options you get in the battle pass, they're even worse. So if this is a way for them to make you spend the premium currency, which, just a reminder, the premium currency costs actual money and has that tiered, monetization where you have to spend more money than you actually want to get the premium currency, and it's just a way to hide the actual cost of buying in-game items. Premium currency, I think, is one of the dirtiest things that these companies do. But you spend that premium currency, in other words, real money, to have a random chance to get things that you couldn't get in the past. You might, just want a specific Yoshi costume or whatever from that. And so you're going to have to spend like probably multiple batches of money to be able to get these items. And it also creates all this FOMO for people that, oh, I better buy and really do the battle pass now, because if I don't, I can't get these items in the future. I might have to spend more money to get the items in the future, right? So if this is what they're trying to do with this, it's extremely dirty and pathetic, which is right up their alley, because they are dirty and pathetic people who really are trying to monetize this game in as aggressive of a way as possible. You look at all the other games that Bandai Namco have been releasing for a little over a year now, and many of them have been major failures. We've talked about that in the past, like they haven't, made a profit. And so it just does seem to be the case, like people have speculated, that higher ups at Bandai Namco are pushing the Tekken team to make as much, to like push as much out of the toothpaste tube as possible with Tekken in terms of making money on it. And there are not that many other ways, I think, you could use a loot box system in this game, right? Because obviously they're not going to give you items for free that you currently have to spend money for. The gold is useless. The default customization items you can already buy. So if it's some sort of new game mode, something related to Tekken Force, as people have speculated, who knows? But it's going to be really interesting to see what this actual graphic is for. Now, speaking briefly about loot boxes, there are many good videos out there explaining why they are a big problem. And, some people in the comments, again, oh, this is not a problem. Why do you care about loot boxes? Whatever. And I'm a boomer and all the rest of it. But just briefly, if you are interested in knowing what is going on with legislation when it comes to loot boxes, there's this really good site, DLA Piper, where you can scroll through different countries and find out what the legislation is like in the country that you're in. So a very interesting thing about that you might not know about Japan is that in Japan there's a different word for loot boxes. They call them gacha games, right? It comes from the term, I think, gachapon, which is It's an onomatopoeia for the sound that you make when you put coins in one of those machines that you turn a wheel and a little plastic ball falls down and you get a random item from inside, right? And since 2012, something called Kompu Gacha, which is short for Komprito Gachapon Game, because you have to make things shorter in Japanese, otherwise you'll be saying them forever. This is a kind of gacha system that you can no longer legally put in games in Japan. A complete gacha game is when you don't get premium items by rolling for them or like pulling, buying boxes. You have to pull specific other items to complete a set, and then that set allows you to get the rare item. But what they do is you get the first, say you need 5 items to complete a set, they make it very easy to get the first 3, and then it's very, very difficult and unlikely that you'll get the last 2. And so it triggers all these biases and problematic ways of thinking in your brain, and you end up spending all this money. It's also interesting that the regulatory body in Japan that regulates what you can and cannot ethically do in video games, I think is actually, as far as I've understood, run by people from the video game industry. So they are regulating themselves, investigating themselves, and coming to the conclusion that everything they're doing is absolutely fine for the most part. In the US, you might know that there was a class action lawsuit against Google, but the reason that case was dismissed was because it was argued that the Google Play Store just shows apps. The apps might be doing problematic things, but the Google Play Store is just a storefront, and so Google aren't, responsible for the practices of the apps that are on its store or something like that. So there's no conclusive legislation in the United States yet. A lot of more stuff has been happening in the EU, and there are some countries where it's now very difficult to put a loot box system in your game. So as some people are saying in the comments here, they would have to, change a lot of the advisories that they have around the game. They would have to, maybe release these systems in specific regions and stuff like that. It's difficult, and I'm starting to believe that maybe this isn't really a loot box system, not because Namco wouldn't do something like that. I just don't really see how they could make it work, but who knows, they're evil and corrupt cocksuckers, so they'll probably, find a way. I just want to talk briefly about some numbers in terms of player retention in this video as well, because I've been looking at, how Tekken 8 is doing as a game since it came out. First of all, something really, because I'm comparing 7 to 8 here, a really interesting thing to note is that Tekken 8 has an all-time peak of players, and this is specifically on Steam, right? That is much, much higher than 7 ever had, 7 was a popular game for a long time, but it had an all-time peak of, almost 19,000 players, whereas, Tekken 8 has 46,000, so much, much bigger. If we look at player retention, Tekken 8 has been bleeding about between 20 and 35% for every month it's been out, and then it's seen a small upswing here in July of 2024, and then it seems that the loss of retention has petered out a little bit. So maybe 8 is sort of finding the comfortable retention that it's sort of going to percolate at for the long term. All the casual short-term players are sort of leaving, and now you're being left with what is going to be the long-term core audience. And so I think they are much less likely to leave the game behind because it takes more to push them away. Namco have done enough to push me away, somebody has been consuming Tekken for, a very, very long time. But, it has to come to a critical point, and it's for me, it was kind of a big, decision. If you look at 7... it also, had a big loss in the first few months it was out. And then it seems to have been a lot more modest in terms of the amount of players that disappeared, right? Every month as we went on. And then you have a massive upswing here in December of 2017, which I think was probably the release of Geese Howard. And then a massive one in September. So a little over a year of the game coming out, which I think coincides with Season 2. Could be. But you have some really big boosts in popularity that has kept the the peak player count for 7 percolating really quite high for most of its lifespan. I think it's impressive that you have like 18,000, as a peak, or almost 19,000 at the very beginning. But if you look at the later seasons of the game around here, you still have like, over 5, 6, 7, 9,000, in some of these months, which I think is really, really impressive. So while Tekken 7 might not have been as explosively successful as Tekken 8 to begin with, I think it did an impressive job of keeping a community engaged for a really long time. And we played the game more or less for an entire decade, and paid money for all these characters coming out and all the rest of it. So it's going to be really interesting to see what is going to be happening with Tekken 8 as the months go by. We know now that they have committed to not making any more major balance updates for the rest of this year, which is interesting because, first of all, the balance of Tekken 8 is still very, very bad in my opinion. It needs a lot of attention, but it's also something that turns a lot of people off when they don't feel like there's something big on the horizon. We've seen the Heihachi trailer, which is probably going to be a pretty major upswing for the game because people care about that character, and it looked pretty cool. There's going to be like story stuff related to it, which is going to get some of the casual players back in as well. So we'll see what happens with that. But my theory when I looked at the way Tekken 8 was being monetized and marketed was that this is a good way of like making a lot of money in the short term, but then you sort of turn people off your game, you destroy your credibility, and you're then going to bleed a lot of retention quite quickly. So it's a way to burn bright, kind of like those shitty fireworks items that you can buy and then literally burn forever in the store of the game. They've put an option in the game, as somebody said in my comments, for you to literally burn money in Tekken 8, which is interesting. So even though you still have a healthy large player base enjoying Tekken 8 right now, which is great, more power to you. I hope the game becomes better. I hope you're having a lot of fun with it. It does seem to be the case that it's going to burn very brightly, but not for as long. As for the whole loot box thing, it's interesting to see people say that, well, if they do this, there's going to be so much backlash and they're probably not going to do it. This is the thing that's going to push me over the edge. Just want to say that even though it might not be the case that they're putting loot boxes in this game, remember that there was a time when we played Tekken 8 when it was just released and it didn't have an in-game store, and then it had an in-game store, but it didn't have a battle pass, and then it had a battle pass, but it didn't have in-game fast food ads, and then it had in-game fast food ads, but it didn't have like sneaker ads from a straight up evil company, but now it has that, and maybe then it didn't have loot boxes, but now it has loot boxes, and I think it's easy to get swept away. It's an argument I've made many times with trailers and new characters and Heihachi coming back from the dead or whatever, and the hype, and then forgetting all of these things. It's sort of the thing that happens with almost all content online and all backlash and all controversy. As long as you just keep on trucking, people kind of just forget and adapt. And I think we are way past the point where this game is already overly monetized. And I think just the fact that they hid the store and released it, retroactively is scumbaggy enough that you should write off the Tekken team as completely corrupt and really pathetic people. Based on that, I don't hope the Tekken community dies or this game or franchise goes away, but the game in a way deserves to fail just based on that, because it's such a strange and shitty and desperate thing to do. But just a little update on the loot box thing. I hope you found it interesting. And, it's difficult right now because we're moving. I'm sitting at a tiny desk, not my usual desk, with all my stuff right now. But I'll try and have some stuff with you in the near future. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you again very soon.